Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm your host, of course, Joe, and today I'm excited to have Megan G with me. Megan's been sober since February 14th, 2025. She's the founder of A Mindful Flow, a wellness brand blending yoga, sound healing, meditation, and somatic practices to support healing and recovery. She's a proud mom of two teens, Maddie and Lane, and Megan has walked through some childhood trauma, an abusive marriage, DUIs, and jail. And today she credits her recovery to a strong program and an even stronger relationship with her creator. Originally from Memphis, now living in Atlanta, Megan is passionate about recovery, mental health, holistic healing. And when she's not working with others, you'll find her riding horses, hiking, catching live music, or traveling with friends and family. Megan's story is about resilience, faith, and turning pain into purpose. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Megan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for your willingness to share your story.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. And I'm always excited to do whatever I can do with my recovery to help others. So thank you.
That's awesome. So what was it like growing up, Megan?
What was it like growing up, Megan? It was different. I think ever since I was little, I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I didn't fit in. And I think that started pretty early on. I definitely came from a loving family. My mom was amazing. My dad left when I was little, and then later committed suicide. So he was not part of my life. And then my grandparents were very involved with me. I spent most of my time, I think, with my grandparents. But I think from a really young age, I just had this, kind of gaping hole in my soul where I, didn't quite feel right. I figure skated when I was younger, and then I started riding horses. I never fit in school. And that was always a struggle. I feel like I was always looking for something to change the way I felt, because I never felt right from the get-go. So yeah.
So that's what I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. My grandmother actually lived with us, so I think we have that in common. What were like your earliest attitudes toward like drinking and drugs? Did you have any like ideas about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was an only child too. I need to add that. So I have that syndrome as well. But, I didn't really, when I was younger, I wasn't super popular in high school. I was at that point pretty into my career, equestrian career, and had planned on becoming a professional in that industry, the hunter jumpers. So there wasn't a lot of partying in high school. I think I took my first drink somewhere in there. I can remember it being like some kind of schnapps or something, and with a friend, and it not even being that big of a deal. I took a couple years off before I started college. And then even when I did, was in school, I didn't live on campus. It was just, I'd go to my classes and then go back to my apartment and then go ride horses all day. So alcohol wasn't, I never thought it was a problem. I did have an aunt that was an alcoholic, and I can remember some things growing up, seeing that. But it wasn't really something discussed in my, around. My grandfather didn't drink at all. He was a minister, And my grandmother, if she did, it was very little. It wasn't anything I ever saw. My mom, would drink on occasion, but it never really, just wasn't anything that, it just wasn't a big deal. And as far as drugs, I don't even think I tried my first drug until I was like in my later 20s. And that was, marijuana. But I don't know. I never thought I had a problem. I thought I was just like everyone else. But, looking back, I can remember, going through something like I always wanted to change my, however I was feeling emotionally, I couldn't handle. So, I'd go to alcohol. I can remember going back to my apartment and, maybe I broke up with a boy and I'd go back to the apartment and like drink alone. And, looking back, that's not normal. I think from the get-go, I wasn't really a normal drinker. I think I've, got away with it because I was kind of surrounded by people who drank very socially. The horse world, the equestrian world there's a lot of drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of hospitality, just drinking and drugs was kind of normal. So I never thought I had a problem, but, I definitely would always drink more than everyone else. Always had to have more when I was done. If I had gone out to a dinner or a restaurant and drank wine, I'd get more wine when I got home. It was never enough. So, and I did know I know a little more now, but, my dad had obviously some mental health issues and, from what I know, addiction issues as well, but none of that stuff was talked about when I was younger.
So, you just made me think I wanted to ask you, and now I lost it. Megan. Jeez. No, I know what I wanted to ask. Was anyone noticing your drinking? Like, did any friends or family members kind of try to intervene at some point?
Yeah. So I think my drinking, I got married pretty young. I was 25, and married a man that I had met in the horse show industry. He was a course designer now, basically on the business side of the horse show events, putting on the events where I was like at riding horses. That's how we met. But I can remember having some consequences, going into my marriage. We got married in the Bahamas and we had a big welcome party. And I remember drinking and like, I was in the bath, like blacked out in the bathroom. With all our family there. And I remember my mom would be the one that would tell me like, you can't handle your alcohol. But I don't think obviously did not, no red flags were raised for me. I thought I was just normal and, the bad hangovers and not remembering how I got home, drunk driving. I loved to drive when I was drunk. Don't know why. It was just something that I did all the time. And I never had any real consequences except for just, bad hangovers, maybe not remembering what I said or did the night before, things like that. But no, besides maybe my mom saying that, I did not really have anyone that intervened until later on. After I had, the birth of my two kids, I had some postpartum. And definitely where the mental health stuff was coming into play. And, but I was drinking the whole time. So I think I had gotten put on an antidepressant at that point, but I eventually, wrecked my car, totaled my car, driving home from a friend's birthday party in Aiken, South Carolina, which is where I lived before moving to Atlanta, and got my first DUI. And even that DUI got taken down. So I didn't really have the real consequences, except for going to jail that night, and you would think that would be a scare enough. But at that point, I can remember my then husband asking me like, do you think you have a problem? And I was like, no, I think it was just a bad night. I'm just drinking, just a bad night. And it was about another year from that, that I went to my first treatment. And at that point, there were a couple of friends, and the physical consequences were starting to get worse. Like I didn't look good. I gained weight. I, was eating unhealthy. I wasn't showing up like I would normally. It was hard for me to get out of bed in the morning to even function with the kids. And then I think I would just drink more to try to get through the day. That's kind of when all that stuff was starting. That was about, I think, 2015, somewhere in there. So.
And that's what brought you to your first rehab?
First rehab was in West Palm Beach, Florida. Yep. First of many. But that was my first treatment, and that was my first introduction to any kind of 12-step programs or anything like that, because they would take us to meetings down there. And I remember going to that rehab for 30 days. I was like, oh, they had a 60 and a 90-day program. And I was like, no, I can't be away from my kids for 30 days. And, at this point they were pretty young. They're 15 and 18 now. So that was 10 years ago. So I did that 30-day program, thought I was great. I'm always like the gold star at rehab. Like I always do really well. But I remember getting out, them taking me to the airport, and I drank in the airport on the way home. Cause it was like, I was suddenly free, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never flown, without drinking. And it just happened because I don't know what I did in that program, but I just had, no clue, about what it was really about, and like the powerlessness that I actually did have. So that kind of started a trek downhill again. I can remember my kids and my in-laws picking me up from the airport with like a welcome home sign, welcome home mom, and all this stuff. And I just felt like the biggest piece of shit, going to treatment and then coming back and like having drank on the way home. And I think I hid it. I think that was the start of me hiding it, which definitely became a huge, part of, my alcoholism. Like I would drink and I would hide it, and try to be sober. I got home, went to some meetings, but never really. And there's not a lot of recovery in Aiken, South Carolina. There are a few good meetings, but I just never got a sponsor. Never put my recovery first. I always, had my kids, my husband, our business. We ran a business together, putting on the equestrian events, and I'd always find an excuse not to go to a meeting. And then when I did go, I didn't, talk to anyone. I just went and came home. And I think it was about 2 years later, I got another DUI. And then that kind of started. This was kind of a typical pattern of mine. Like I would do okay for a while. I try to control the drinking or maybe get a little bit of time sober. And then shit would hit the fan. So, I look back now, and I blamed a lot of it on the status, the condition of my marriage, because there was a lot going on there. But, now I can see that it was all me. But
we have that in common with the DUIs. My first DUI got reduced to reckless driving.
Yep.
A little bit of consequences. It was more of a joke type thing. Mm-hmm. And second one wasn't so funny,
Like my second one, I actually had my kids in the car. Luckily, though, they were very little, and I happened to get pulled over or the blue lights came on behind me right a block from my house. So I pulled in the house, of course, and the kids were able to get out. But that was not funny at all. And the amount of times I drove with them being under the influence, is one of my biggest regrets, and just something that, I daily I try to show up for them like I can. But, that's something I can never take back, putting myself in them and everyone else in danger. But that was the second DUI. And then there was actually a third one. But after that DUI, I went to treatment in North Carolina. And it seems like every time I would go to treatment, I would like pick up things here and there and like bring it home and practice some tools, but I would never get fully into, the program. I always just was very in self-will and self-centered about, it all being about me doing what I needed to do, and felt like I was doing for my kids and my family, but not realizing like how ultimately how selfish and self-centered I really was. And then I would end up drinking again. And marriage was starting to go a little bit downhill. And there was some verbal abuse, there was some emotional abuse. But he also, he had some childhood trauma as well. And I think us two together were just like fire and matches there for a little bit. My drinking, he was a heavy drinker as well at times, but where he could stop, I couldn't stop. I think I blamed him for a really long time for my drinking. Like, he would make me feel a certain way about myself, and then I would do whatever I could do to cope with that. It was alcohol, and then shopping, other relationships, validation, attention from other men. That's, where I was going, just because I was just so, lost and hopeless, and just couldn't stand the way I felt. I was very restless, irritable, and discontent at that point in time. But there were actually two more DUIs. I went to treatment twice in North Carolina. And I think that last time is when I finally had come home and got a sponsor and started working worked the steps and in the program that I'm in, but didn't finish that, just started it. But it's like I would cherry pick different things that I could use. I always, I learned a lot, and I learned more about myself each time, but I could never just fully accept that I'm an alcoholic. I'm always going to drink again. I'm always the girl that drinks again, and my life is unmanageable. It took a while to get there. So,
well, what got you there? If you don't, is that a fair question to ask? Like, what was
absolutely. Yep. So after those two treatments in North Carolina, and this is going back to about, 2023, fall of 2022, I think. I had gone, I could always string together like 6, 7, 8, 9 months, something like that at the most. And then at some point I would drink again, and hide it. And I was good at hiding it for a little while, but then eventually you could tell, but it certainly did not help the status of my marriage, or any of the other choices I was making. And, as my marriage was kind of falling apart, it was just toxic for everyone involved, the kids, everything else. That year, things had just gotten bad. I remember I had gotten COVID that summer, and just got really sick. Like my body, I was not doing well. And then I ended up going back to treatment, that September, I think, of 2022. And that was a place in Augusta, Georgia. And there was the first time that anyone had mentioned sober living to me. Like, perhaps maybe you need to go to sober living. And I'm like, I don't know what I need, but I need to change. I've got to change. I'm not sure if I stay in this marriage, if I will be alive in a year. And again, all me, we both had our part in it, but it was that bad. So I went to that treatment in Augusta, and then went to sober living in Atlanta after that. And that pretty much changed my trajectory. Me and my husband separated, which was very difficult. We were separated for about 1.5 years before we actually got a divorce. But that, in itself, they say don't make a lot of, changes and choices in early sobriety. Well, that was one I just, did. Before, I thought I was clear-headed at that point, having 3 months sober or 2. I don't even remember how much I had, but I went ahead and did that and started my journey in Atlanta and sober living at I look back now, and I really owe a lot, I guess, to the owner of that sober living. It was very strict. And I actually ended up getting kicked out because I eventually drank again. But it was very strict. We had to go to 2 meetings a day. Plus I did an outpatient program, and, but still it was all about Megan. When I got here, of course, I started getting a little attention and the rooms in my program, and I met a guy, and my everything had been so bad before in my marriage. As soon as I got any like positive or someone that seemed to treat me well, I was just all about it. And I remember them telling me like, you don't need to be doing this. Like, you're not going to be with this guy in a year. And I just thought I was in love with this guy. And that's also a pattern for me too. Like, it just, if I quit drinking, I'm going to find something else to take the pain away or to make me feel good. And at that point in time, I just didn't have that awareness, the self-awareness I do now. But that sober living ended up relapsing, went back to treatment. Then Florida again, went to in Jacksonville. I've been to a lot of treatment centers, so I'm a rehab, A+ student. But while I was down there, I remember I was still talking to this man, and, so obviously I wasn't focusing on myself, because I thought this man was the love of my life. Crazy. But, got back from there, and then went to a different sober living, for about 6 months, and stayed sober. I think I had a really great sponsor to start here in Atlanta, but still, I think if I could say one of the thing that just kept holding me back was I didn't know how to be honest. And just little things. I heard this saying the other day that like, I'm lying. I'm even lying when I'm honest. I don't even know when I'm lying. And I would talk to her. We started working this, we were working the steps, but there was always something I wasn't talking about, either a relationship or what was really bothering me. I had no clue how to be authentic. And, looking back, I don't think I ever knew how to be authentic. I think I was always trying to put on this like persona. I wanted people to perceive me a certain way. And I didn't even realize I was doing that stuff. So worked with this sponsor for a while, went to this other sober living, which is an amazing program. And then eventually relapsed again a couple times. I think I got 6 months and then 90 days, and then back to treatment. And all along I had started this new outpatient treatment in Atlanta, another one that is a trauma resolution program, that I also probably changed a lot for me, just being able to work on some of the childhood trauma and some of the trauma I had created myself, and then the trauma from the marriage really worked there. We did some ART and EMDR and, all kinds of things. And that definitely helped me a lot. And I think kind of got me introduced to having more of a network in Atlanta, a lot of different meetings, some different people. And that was kind of, where I think I started to find myself a little bit. But it still went on. I had a year sober last year, and I'm a chronic relapser, like 100%. I had about a year sober last year and then relapsed again. And now have a new sponsor that has just taken me through things in a really different way, and has, just kind of gotten me outside of myself, but looking in at myself, and it's just seeing things in a whole different light, like just a completely different angle of life. Or I have a different, angle of approach with everything that I, deal with: relationships, work, money, everything. But so, yeah, that's kind of what got me started, was really just coming to Atlanta, getting to be a part of this, recovery community, whether it's, through meetings or just outpatient programs. I started getting into some holistic modalities, because I had been to treatment so many times, that most of those places had yoga and some kind of trauma informed, like somatic movement. And I had always practiced yoga my whole life. But I guess actually I'd always kind of thought about getting my certification, just because it was something I enjoyed, and just something that I kind of wanted to do, whether I started to teach or not. But I ended up doing that, got my 200-hour certification, and then quickly sort of saw a pull to working in behavioral health, working with other people going through addiction, other people going through mental health issues. So that's also been a huge part of, besides me practicing it myself, also helping others in that way. So.
You said a couple things, and I was like, okay, Megan, you have to tell me what these things are. You said what was it? I know I read the somatic practices.
Oh, somatic.
What is that?
So somatics is any kind of somatics is, there's talk therapy, there's yoga, sound, but somatics just means like getting in touch with your body, being able to feel, notice thoughts, sensations, sense, the six senses, not the sixth sense, the five senses. I am going to talk about a sixth sense though at some point, but it's just about getting back in tune with your body after, going through a crisis, like addiction, mental health, because we tend to just get so, out of it. So that's all somatic, somatics really is, which yoga is a type of a somatic, type movement, because you're focusing, you're not just working out, you're focusing on the breath, on the movement, on how things feel. So it's different than just like going to the gym and working out, but
that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a lot of science behind how, we store a lot of things. Our body, the body keeps the score. I don't know if you've heard of that book, but everything we go through, our different parts of our bodies hold on to the past, like any past trauma and anything. So most of the somatic movement is, a lot of, things working the shoulders or the hips or different, yoga poses that, help release a lot of that, help release the trauma, help regulate the body, which in turn, is definitely a huge part of my recovery.
So what was the hardest part about getting sober this time? Like what's different, I guess?
The hardest part, I think, shame, of relapsing again. And having to show my face, I went leading up to that relapse. I was teaching yoga. I was working in a few treatment facilities, and I was in a relationship. At this point, my divorce had gone through, I believe, beginning of May of last year, so 2024. And I started getting a lot of opportunities. I started getting my life back. I started managing my own life too, and not remembering, what I needed to do. I had worked the steps. I had sponsees. It looked on the outside like I was very, doing what I was supposed to be doing. Like I said, I'm always an A+ student. I check all the boxes. From the outside looking in, it looks like I'm working this amazing program, but in realistic inside, I'm a complete mess, and I'm probably lying about something. I had gotten a job as program director of a sober living, along with all these other practices I was doing, and I didn't know how to pause. I didn't know how to, ask for help. It was all about just what was best for me, money, making more money, stuff like that. And I got some, a little bit of attention with, doing that too. Like, I think there are a couple of people had posted on it, social media, about this new role that I had. And I just, all of a sudden I had the pressure of holding it all together. I was like, well, I can't screw up. I've got to hold all this together. People are telling me how good I'm doing. I can remember people messaging me and being like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. And, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, like I have to hold face here. But in that time I started to not talk about what was really going on inside me, and not even knowing it. I had an amazing sponsor back then that I'm still very good friends with today. And, she, I recently made amends to her, and, in that conversation, it's like I could only be as honest as I was yesterday. I may call you after the fact and tell you like, hey, I made this mistake or made this decision, but I never knew how to pause in the moment. And I would take some intuition, some thoughts that I had, I would pray, I do pray, big prayer and meditator, but I think there were things that I thought was God, telling me to do certain things. It wasn't at all. I had completely taken, my selfishness and self-centeredness and my ego had taken back over for sure. So when that relapse happened, of course, I tried to hide it at first and didn't tell anybody. But I think people knew. It didn't last long. I was back in detox, back in treatment. But I think, the overall, I don't like thinking that people are judging me. I don't like not being perceived the way that I want to be perceived. So just the shame of that whole, losing jobs, losing, some of the places I was working at, because I worked in treatment. So obviously I'm not, I'm going to lose those jobs not being sober. But having to go through and do all that took a lot of surrendering and letting go for me. And it was not pretty. It was difficult. So, I guess I'll add this. I think you asked what's changed. I think just 100% of every part of my being, has conceded to my innermost self that I am, not only powerless over drugs and alcohol, that I could always understand. Because when I take a drink, I don't know what's going to happen, or a drug or anything else. And, but the unmanageability part, is what I don't think I really understood, and how powerless I'm over that, even when I'm sober. Has nothing to do with the substance. It all has to do with me. And that I think is the key difference. Just kind of reworking that a step one, and just understanding the unmanageability, and also understanding that, I don't really have an alcohol problem. Like, I have a sobriety problem. I don't know how to handle life. I don't know how to manage life and my emotions, and, and just starting from that point has made a huge difference.
I have a friend who always says we are as honest as liars can be.
Yeah. I love that. That's exactly what I heard. This woman said, and a speaker said, like, I'm lying when I'm honest. And that is absolutely 100% how I am. I mean, whether it's exaggerating something or, it's little things, but that self-awareness, I have a different awareness of that now. And, it's still not easy, but I've gotten better about just pausing, calling. Like, I don't know how to live. So I need directions for a while, like I need to ask for advice, get connected to, I've gotten connected with some women that have a lot of sobriety and are also going through things that I'm going through. I've got one kid in college, one just started high school, and just finding, the people that are at the same stage I am in life, and, have maybe been through some things, been through a divorce, been through, some trauma and, stuff like that. So getting connected like that in the community has really helped as well.
It sounds like you're finding your tribe.
I'm trying. I always feel like I'm kind of an oddball. Like, that, and also I think I'm okay with being the way I am. I'm not always trying to fit in. Because that's what I did my whole life. Like, I'd see a group of people, I would change myself to fit in. And now I'm figuring out who Megan really is. And then the people that are supposed to be in my life will, be around. And, I'm seeking out the people with a strong recovery and a strong program, that, that their primary purpose is helping others and, staying sober. So I think, another thing I did last year was got very into, just wanting to fit in with certain people or go out and do certain things. And then when if I got left out, I'd get my feelings hurt. And it's just, looking back, it's just all, very self-centered behavior back then. And again, I didn't even see it. But, today I really try to just see what I can bring to life, or bring to other people or help with, instead of thinking about myself the whole time. But again, I'm still always thinking about myself. I just, I have the awareness now.
No, it's fair. You remind me, we are all, I think in recovery, we're like the island of misfit toys.
Yeah.
We're all misfits, in some way. We at least feel that way.
Yeah.
So what helps you stay committed, like when it gets tough today,
Honestly, God, my relationship with my creator, that is the number one. I didn't realize coming into any kind of recovery program that, I didn't really care what I was doing at first. I just wanted to have a better life. I wanted to be, feel better. But honestly, I've come to realize that my relationship with my higher power is the most important thing. And that's actually what it's, all about. I wouldn't have told, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said, hey, I'm going to go to some meetings, go to rehab, and find a relationship with God. That is not at all what I would have said. And I thought I had a relationship with God back then too. But I didn't. Too self-centered too. But when things get hard, I have an amazing sponsor. I call her, I call friends. And also my children. I've made enough mistakes with them. And that's something that's hard for me. My daughter mostly was the one that had to get punished because of my drinking, I feel like, because she was a little bit older. And that's just something every day I, just try to show up for them as best I can. I'd actually just got back this weekend from going to one of her horse shows. And so, yeah, I just, obviously my children it's not enough of a reason to never drink again or to want to, or any of that, but that it is it's a huge part of my motivation to, just be a better mom, be a better human being, be a better ex-wife. Me and my ex husband, we co-parent pretty well today. And a year ago, we could not. He was on my resentment list every night. But now, that things have changed. It's just that perspective change. I'm able to just see my part in everything. And I just don't have the luxury of, holding on to any resentments or, anything like that. It doesn't really matter if someone's done something to me. I, just have to be the bigger person. And I, I don't know. I just look at things differently. I just keep my side of the street clean as best I can. I mean, that's, I know they say like the spiritual life, we have to live it. And, I do as best I can. I'm not, obviously not, golden or anything, but the way I look at things and respond to things today is very different than even a year ago. And I would have said I had great sobriety a year ago. But it's like each time I learn more about myself, I kind of go up a level in the spirituality department. And I look back today and the relapse was not a great journey. But I think I needed that to get to where I am today. This last relapse, at least.
You say you call relapse. I always called them default mode.
Yeah, I like that.
Because, for people like me and you, I think that's really, it's the default, that is the natural thing to do, is to go drink and do drugs for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Me too. So not doing that is different. Yeah. My default, I never want to feel bad. Like sad, happy, anything. I'm constantly, and I still do it with other things today. I'll spend too much money on Amazon and, but I'm very aware of what I'm doing. But yeah, my default mode is selfish, self-centered, dishonest. I was just a flat out liar for a really long time, whether it be just a little white lie. But then that would always turn into something bigger. And then just, I think being able to recognize and accept the person that I, used to be. I think I always thought, well, I'm not that bad, or, oh, I did that because, I did this because of this person, because of what they did to me. And now it's just like, no, this is you. It's a me problem, and I don't, how I can't react. I have no right to react with alcohol or, anything like that. But yeah, I try to be, I'm honest as the best of my ability. And if I'm not, I'll own up to it. And I try to just look at situations differently. Try to, if I'm starting to feel funny today, like I'm calling someone to see how their day is, instead of holding things in or calling someone to talk about what's going on with me. But I think the biggest thing that helps me today is just getting out of myself and helping other people.
What's like one of the tools that you find or that you use like maybe most often or that you find the most helpful, when you do feel a little squirrely?
I think the biggest tool I use is calling someone, which is not easy. There's something very intimate and vulnerable about calling someone on the phone. And that's something I used to know I'd never like to do. And to be honest, I could still be a lot better about it. But I think when I'm squirrely, I immediately really need to talk about it. And then the other tools, I facilitate when I do yoga and everything. I facilitate breath work as well. But so breathing is a big thing I can do in the moment. Just some deep breaths in the nose, out the mouth. And there's several breath work techniques that I can use. I pray. If it depends on the situation, but meditate, or just, physically move my body. Usually it will get me into a different headspace, listening to music, things like that.
So what are some of the best things that have happened to you?
Best things.
Yeah.
I think the best things that have happened to me lately is a relationship with my children has significantly gotten better. There was a point in time there, when I first came to Atlanta, my daughter didn't even want to talk to me, which is just painful for a mother. But that relationship has since, changed, and we're quite close now. And so that's probably the number one thing that has happened. I, got my trauma informed certifications and a couple other somatic certifications in the yoga, and started also doing sound healing therapy. So I got a pretty cool job today where, I basically get to go and help other addicts and other people struggling with, kind of what helped me. I teach yoga, meditation, and provide sound bath healing for people. So it's pretty cool to look at. I remember when I was in South Carolina, like that year before I came to Atlanta, just not even wanting to be alive, and scared to scared to leave my husband, scared that I would never see my kids again, just scared to be on my own. But now, I've kind of walked through that fear, and it's not always easy at all. I still struggle with, financial insecurity all the time, but I'm doing something that I love. And that's pretty cool to me. I never thought I would, be making money as a yoga teacher, or sound bath healer, any of those kind of things. I mean, I spent the last, 20 years in the equestrian industry. And so it's just like a total 180. then also just relationships in general. I think relationship with my mom, my ex-husband, friends, that's all changed quite a bit. And it's, nice to hear, I'll hear people say like, you seem different. And I'm like, don't tell me I'm doing good. And that's not, I like to self-sabotage. So, but I can feel, just a difference. And then honestly, the number one thing is just probably my relationship with God. I can tell my higher power, is just so much stronger. I have this, consciousness that, I didn't have before. And, I really strive to live as best I can by, spiritual principles. I mean, honesty, is really important. As long as I'm talking about what, is going through this crazy head with somebody that I trust, I'm usually okay. The second I start holding things in, I'm headed for trouble. So.
So what, well, let me ask this, because you mentioned something, sound bath.
Yes.
Okay. I am naive to this stuff, Megan, so I need your help. So if
Yeah. So with a sound bath, so it's another form of energy healing. I have different instruments. I have crystal bowls. I have this one thing that makes it sounds like a waterfall. I have a rain stick, different chimes, a gong. So I basically just take people through, it's sort of a meditation. It's like a sound healing meditation. And it's pretty cool because there's a lot of scientific evidence behind how these frequencies, because each instrument is a different tune, a different frequency, different notes, affect our bodies in different ways. Sound can travel through everything, your bone, muscle, skin, everything. And it affects you on a cellular level. It helps with depression, anxiety, just regulation of the body. And there's a lot of things that the sound healing is good for. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So what's a typical day in your life look like now?
Typical day is I wake up. I have a pretty good morning routine. I do, or I go through my meditation. I don't want to say do it like I'm active and, meditation. And it's some sort of, sometimes I'll have different spiritual books I read, but right now I'm actually just doing something from the big book. And, I make contact with God. I ask what do I need to do today? What do I need to be? Because I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing. And it just kind of gets my head right. So I do that. I pray. I make, my coffee or smoothie or whatever. I'm very into, I've got lots of my supplements and gotten into peptides and all these other things lately. But then I, usually have a group. I'll have my first group, usually around 11. So I leave the house, maybe 10:30. And then some mornings I'll get up usually and do some kind of exercise too. I'll either walk or I'll do yoga on my own, or I go to a yoga class, at least 3 or 4 mornings a week. I try my best. I'm not perfect with that, but anyway, so after, my little morning routine, I'll go work. I usually have at least 2 or 3 groups per day. And that's teaching yoga, doing meditation, sometimes breath work, and then the sound healing. So I do that. And then, I go to it, probably go to it, depending on what day it is, I'll go to a meeting. I have a group that I normally go to, but there's certain meetings that I will attend like clockwork every week. So that's really important. For me, I, might meet with a couple of sponsees. I do that at least 2 or 3 times a week. And, then I'm kind of wrapping it up for the day. I think probably one of my worst things is I have a couple of late groups. And when I do those late yoga classes, I get a little hyped up at night. So I have to be good about, getting home, winding down. I try to read, at some point in there too, I usually have called my sponsor or called somebody to connect with, called my kids, called my mom, just to see how their day's going, or called somebody to see if I could do anything to help them, calling them to see how they're doing, anything to get me out of, thinking about myself. So that's pretty much a typical day. And then I try to be in bed by 10 or so, but I'm not always the best with that. I try to read, but usually I won't lie. I can get caught scrolling on my phone or I'll have a show that I'm watching. So,
you're not alone in that. You're not alone. We don't live perfect lives, but
no.
You mentioned something, so I have to ask. You said you would talk about the sixth sense.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I heard that because when I was the sixth sense, I'd like to say, we have all our senses like touch, sight, sound, and that's kind of part of a lot of what I'll, when I'm teaching or helping other people. It's just noticing what's around us, noticing, trying to be in the moment. It's always about the present moment, and not thinking about the past, thinking about the future. And so the sixth sense is my consciousness with my higher power, and like that intuition, like that gut feeling, that I didn't used to have. So I just kind of like to call it, like the sixth sense. And I have to do things every day to keep that, though. If I start not doing the work, not doing my morning routine, not going to meetings, not calling people, that sense kind of goes away. And that sixth sense kind of helps me navigate life. I also heard someone say one time, it's like, I'm not inviting God into my day. I'm being asked to be invited into God's day. Which that changes, a little perspective for me. I'm like, I'm not the one running the show. And God shows up for me in a lot of ways. I couldn't even tell you exactly what my personal idea of God is, but I feel God when I'm in nature. I feel God when I'm in the yoga studio. I see God through other people. So, me inviting myself into God's day might look like me calling my sponsor and asking, for advice on something before I do it. It's, not calling after the fact saying, hey, I went out on a date with this guy, it's like, hey, what do you think about this? And usually it's like, yeah, that's a bad idea. So that's the sixth sense. And that's, how I see God too.
No, that's cool. That's, what would you say to somebody who may be listening, and maybe, doesn't feel like they have hope?
I'd say that's a great place to be, because I had to get hopeless. And I think there's a big misunderstanding between, desperate and hopeless. Because I'm like that, I have to touch the hot stove 20 times. I have to get hit by the bus 5 times, before I figure things out. And, I feel like being in a place of hopelessness is right where you need to be. And that from there, you can only go up. And, I understand being in that place, and I understanding having like a lot of shame and a lot of just low self-esteem, low self-worth. But just knowing that this can be done and there is help out there, and there's other women, I've been through a lot and have shared my story with a lot of other women that have been through very similar things, being in their 40s or going through a divorce, DUIs, issues with kids, stuff like that. And, also at I'm 43, there's also, there's been hormonal changes happening all along the way too, that, that's something that I've connected with other women about, and, 10 years ago wasn't even looking at, but, now I, kind of know how to eat, how to supplement, how to, I go to, how to take care of myself, but that's something only other women go through, so, I guess if someone feels hopeless and is listening to this, I would say seek something bigger than yourself, whether it's another person, someone in the, a meeting, a higher power. Cause I feel like that meets us where we're at as long as we're like seeking. But if anyone's hopeless, like I would love to talk to you because I've been there. And I don't think until I got hopeless was I able to truly accept the nature of my, the illness, disease, whatever you want to call it. And, really surrender to everything. Not just the fact that I, couldn't drink, but surrender to like, I have a problem with, sobriety. Like it has nothing to do with the alcohol for me. It's all about me, for the most part. The alcohol was my solution.
That's well said. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we haven't?
I don't think so. I guess I can talk about my life today, a little more, but, I definitely owe a lot to, and I'm a lot to the program that I'm in. I've been to a lot of different, recovery type meetings. Obviously I bring in, the yoga part to it too. And I go to therapy. And I think that for me, like I'm a really bad alcoholic. And I've learned that I can't really do things half measures. I have to be all in. And also hang around with other women that are all in too. Because there are so many different routes to recovery. I mean, I've been to some, different, like I said, lots of different types of meetings, and I think there's a place for everything. But, I think today, I guess the biggest thing is just always learning something new about myself too. And actually being able to like look other people in the face and, own up to my side of a lot of things. And I still have a lot of amends to make, honestly. But there's something just spiritual about that. Owning up to the fact that, I was a liar, I was a cheat, I was just a very dishonest person. And, I don't think I was able to look at that, in years past. I think I always thought, oh, I have some kind of out, or I have it's just, like I think I said that earlier. I would always do something because of something else, it was never my fault. Now I'm able to take complete and total, credit for anything that, any chaos that I've caused. And I definitely was like self-will run riot all the time. I didn't want to listen to anyone else. And now I listen to people. And it humbles me. It humbles me a lot. I've gotten looked in the eye and, haven't, being told I remember talking to my sponsor one day and telling her a story about something that I had done. And I'll giggle when things aren't funny. And I've read before that can be a trauma response. It can be a lot of things, but I would always do that. And she would always point it out to me, but I giggled and she looked at me and she's like, why are you laughing? I said, well, because I'm not that kind of person. And she looked at me dead in the eye and said, you are that kind of person, and I'm like, no, not me. Like, but it was something that I had done with a guy, and it wasn't, I didn't treat them right, but before, I don't think I was able to look at that. I think I was like, oh, I'm just an angel and everything's being done to me. So.
Yeah. My old friend Dave used to always say it's not old behavior if we're still doing it.
Yep. It's the behaviors. I mean, that the illness or disease centers in my mind, so it's the behaviors there. Whether I'm drinking or not, it's there. So, like, again, I think I've said this 50 times, but like, it's like, I have a life problem, it's not, I don't know how to live life. So I need help with that. I need other people, lots of things to help me get by with that, but me on my own accord and making my own decisions and, all that for a while, like it just, I think I called my sponsor and asked her all the time, like, well, what do I do about this? What do I do about this? But now, I'm starting to have that more of that sixth sense with things. But I still call her and ask her about everything. And I'm able to be really honest, just disgustingly honest with her about like things I don't want to talk about. And I have a couple other women. I don't tell everything to everybody, but there's definitely a few women that I talk to, and I like talk about these thoughts and feelings that I have, like, oh, I'm jealous of this girl because of this, and just things that I normally would never have talked about, but still affect me. That kind of stuff goes on. I do a nightly inventory, and kind of go through my day and be like, all right, well, I did good here. It's kind of like checks and balances. Like, all right, well, we were good here, we were bad here. Where do we owe an apology? And so, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you being so honest and telling your story. But I can't let you go without our rapid fire questions, Megan. No pressure.
All right. I'm excited.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So what is your favorite recovery slogan?
Probably live and let live.
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Oh no, I don't have any least favorites. One day at a time. No, I had probably one day at a time. And I'll tell you why. It's because I have to understand that, like, this is for the rest of my life. I can't do things one day at a time. So that may work early on, but for me, for an alcoholic like me, it's like, no, this is life now. So
fair enough. What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
Compassion.
If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
That you're worthy of love and relationships and connection, and you're worthy. You're good enough, just how you are in this moment. So.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
I'm a music lover. I actually just went to a concert a couple days ago, but it depends on what mood I'm in. Lately, I've been listening to quite a bit of EDM type music. But I also love country. This is a hard one. Probably anything Odessa or I'll just say that. But usually some kind of electronic techno bass type music just kind of gets me going.
I have to give a shout out to my bonus son. He loves EDM music too.
Yeah, I was never an EDM into it, but I think that's another sound that's supposed to be great for your brain too. So I think it keeps me alive as well. But Rufus Du Sol, I love. Also Inner Bloom, that's a great song. I love listening to that. I saw him live this year, so yeah.
There it is. If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Oh, wow. I would love to grant myself one wish to help with my recovery. Probably have an opportunity to, I'm looking at some different retreats to go on, like some yoga and recovery type retreats. So I would love to, have the money or to do more stuff like that and not have to worry about finances. So
it's a good one.
Travel. Yeah. So just being able to do that for myself and connect with other women that are kind of doing what I'm doing. Yeah.
What step do you love the most?
Probably the 10th step. I don't know if I would have said that before, but I think that it's extremely important. I think that's where I used to fall short, and I think that that's me being honest with another person. I love inventory, period. So, there's spot check inventory, there's your daily, nightly, or whatever you want to call it, or, and then your 4th step. But, I think the 10th step, because that's how I have to live my daily life. I'm going out and just seeing, what I can do better, what I did good. If I need to talk to someone, I'm talking about it. So I love that. I love that, like 10, 11, and 12 are action steps, and just steps that I live.
What step do you love the least?
Oh man, I don't hate any of the steps. Probably 1, just because I think it's difficult. I think it gets misunderstood. I think, I look at step 1 now like it's 2 parts. I'm powerless over alcohol, dash, and my life is, well, there's no and. It just says dash, my life is unmanageable. And I feel like that step is so important, but I think it gets misunderstood a lot. At least it was for me. I never understood the second part. My life being unmanageable had 0 to do with my alcoholism. Like, that's just me. That's me sober. So hard to say I don't like it. I think it was difficult. I would have never have said I had a problem with step 1, but obviously I did. And it took a lot of journey and a lot of going through different things and to learn that. I never had a sponsor really tell me that until this time around. So.
What is one of your favorite movies?
I love The Town. And I'm kind of a nerd. I love Star Wars. I love anything. I love like Avengers and, stuff like that. But The Town, and then another one I love is kind of a little lesser known, is True Romance. It's one of my favorites.
And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Just that I did okay. I did most of what she, whatever wanted me to do in this life. And I had a purpose and I helped people. I think that's my, goal right now, is to use what I've been through to help other people, other women, men too, but the women seem to understand me a little more.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've helped a lot of people today, and I appreciate you sharing your story and taking the time. So Thank you, Megan.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you. It's an honor to be asked to do this, because, there's a lot of times that I just don't feel like I have anything, or I used to feel this way. I don't have anything to offer, but, I really appreciate you asking me. And then also I thank God every day, because being sober is a big deal. Like I look at it as a big deal. And I'm so grateful to be here today, because I probably shouldn't be. I should probably be dead. Yeah. So I want to do anything I can to, tell my story and help others. So I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great having you. So, and for our listening audience out there, please subscribe to our friends at the Daily Ponderables.com, your recovery source for inspiration and encouragement every day. A new episode of The Cup of Joe Show is released every Thursday at noon. Visit thecupofjoeshow.net, or you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast apps: Podbean, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share, because someone out there needs to hear this today. Have a good day, everybody.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute 1 hour and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to the Cup of Joe Show.